Hello, welcome to Aussie Wristwatch. I am Jessica Liley. This is my humble YouTube channel where I talk about all things watches. People who know me know that I love watches but don't know the most about watches as a budding enthusiast or collector. So the whole point of this channel is to learn and have some fun in the process. So today, let's get going because I'm going to go through not an exhaustive list, but a pretty decent list of the different types of watch styles. Now, there's a couple of reasons I'm doing this. A, you guys actually asked me for this list, so you ask, I shall deliver. And I am also still very young on this journey, even though I do own some really nice watches, including my Omega Seamaster 300, which I'm wearing today. People keep asking for a wrist check and I keep forgetting, so there's today's wrist check for you. So let's get started on watch styles. Alright, so I don't know about you guys, but one of the things that absolutely calls to me when I look at a watch in a store, online, on somebody's wrist, is the dial. It is super important to me. It is basically the first thing I notice. In fact, because those of you who actually know me know I don't know a great deal about caliber movement, and I'm learning about that. I wouldn't be able to tell you about what movement is in a watch off the top of my head, like some people can. But a watch, I'll be able to talk back about what kind of dial it was, at least in terms of what it looked like, not necessarily about what that particular dial is called or known as. And so that's why we're going to go through some of those today. All right, let's start off easy. Let's start off with a crosshair dial, which is quite simply as it sounds. So hang on, I've got to take a sip of coffee because last week was a hard week. If you don't already know, I was unwell. I had food poisoning. So I was about 50 shades of green. I'm feeling much better this week. Thank you very much. Thank you for the people who reached out, sent their well wishes. Look, I was sick, but I was fine. So let's get back to it. Sorry, I digress. So crosshair is what it sounds like. I don't know about you guys. I watch a lot of action films, so I've heard the term a lot. I had him in my crosshairs. So if you think about that for a minute, because it's going to explain the watch style perfectly, I think. Let's say we've got a sniper and they're looking down the scope and you can see sort of the target. That's the crosshairs. So it's those lines. So on a watch dial, it is the prominent dial pattern, and it's from the mid-century dress watches. So Breitling, Transocean and Omega DeVille kind of really made this popular. And it's plain, and it's one pair of horizontal and vertical lines where they meet each other in the center of the dial. So they start from 12 to 6 and 3 to 9. It actually looks pretty cool on that Omega DeVille. I'll pop up a photo of it. Yeah, it's kind of cool. I never would have known, had I not researched this, that kind of dial was a crosshair dial. Enamel dials are the next. So they're very desirable since they're actually really rare and they actually need proper skills to make and create. So the technique dates back to the 13th century BC. And quite simply put, it's enamel of soft glass which contrasts with red lead silica and soda, which will liquefy and bond to a material if beaten between 800 and 1200 degrees Celsius. To get the different colours, the elements have to be combined together using iron for grey, iodine for red, and chromium for green. And they're really quite pretty dials, I must say. I'll pop up some photos so you can have a look at them. But overall, I don't know whether I'd actually be able to tell this dial just by looking at it. I think, well, maybe if I had a few sort of lined up in person, but online I can't tell if it's an enamel dial or not. So let me know if you guys can. As you know, I'm always happy to be schooled. Okay, gilt dials. These ones are very, very cool. So the literal meaning of this technique is covered thinly with gold paint and gold leaf, which is exactly what a gilt dial is. So All the various components of a watch dial are printed in gold paint. So for example, a really great watch to look at for this is the Rolex Submariner from 1954. And so you'll see the dial is just gold leaf gilt. And I think Rolex is even in the gilt format. And it just looks awesome. I suspect that's a really expensive process to undertake. But we're talking about expensive watches here, so who cares? Next dial is the California dial. So the Cali for short, and it dates back to the 1930s, and it's got Roman numerals on top, usually 10 and 2, and it's got Arabic numerals below it. Cali dial. The next one is the linen dial, which I actually really like when I've seen this. It's very cool. So it's a textured dial with tiny vertical and horizontal batch markers created with a linen-like texture. So for example, the Rolex Datejust, the reference 1603, and the vintage Bulova Surf King 17J11AL. Also other epic examples is the Tudor Prince and the Seiko Lord. I'll pop up some pictures of the ones I could find so you can get an example, but I just think the texture of this dial really is quite impressive and very different. And I really like it. I don't have one in my collection, but I definitely look to add one at some point. All right, Meteorite Dials. These are also super cool. I mean, not just because of what they're made of, but they look awesome. So, as the name implies, it's composed of polished slices of meteorite. So each piece is cut and polished individually, and each is different from the other, making it highly unique. One of the most famous that comes to mind, of course, is the Rolex Master GMT, the Rolex Daytona, and also the Omega Speedmaster Dark Side of the Moon. Okay, the next dial is a porcelain dial, and it's a decorative dial, and they're usually white and contain some amount of clay. They have a minimalistic look, but they're actually extremely difficult to make. A great example of this is the Seiko Presage Arita, and it's very, very classic. All right, perhaps maybe this is one of the most popular or best known dials out there, and that's the Sunburst Dial, which basically has paint finish that bursts out from the center of the dial and it plays with light. And like I said, it's quite common. I was just looking at my watch that I'm wearing and knowing full well that I don't have a Sunburst dial in here, but I actually do have it on, and I've just got it here on my desk actually, just not deliberately, just because I've got a whole heap of my watches here at the moment. Okay, so my Panerai Luminor GMT 2A, which has finger marks all over it, but let me see if I can get this for you, is a Sunburst dial. Of course, I'm going to put photos up, guys, so you can see much better what that looks like without my really poor camera skills. But in effect, that is a Sunburst dial, and they just catch the light in different ways, whether you're outside or inside with the light, and it just kind of makes the dial pop. You might remember I did a video on a Rolex killer. It was like $100 or $200 Seiko that has a really cool Sunburst dial for the price point as well. So they find themselves on very much entry-level watches and very much high-end level watches. And as I said, they're very popular. They look fantastic, and it just kind of gives everything a little bit of elegant pizzazz. All right. The last main dial I want to talk about is the Guilloche, and it comes in various different techniques, but effectively it is engine turning in an age-old technique in watchmaking, and it's traditionally done on a rose engine. It's a pattern-guided and hand-turned engraving machine. There's countless patterns of it out there. There's I'm going to get all of these wrong now because I'm like, this is what happens when I go off book. There's a Cloud de Paris, a Sunburst Guilloche, and a Grand Tapisserie. And I'll put photos up of the different kinds of watches, and you'll get an idea of what they look like. But they're fucking amazing. they are beautiful, and you can see the intricacy and the detail that goes into these watches, and also why these watches are probably a little bit more expensive because of the way that they have to be made and using this very particular, very, very intricate technique. But they really do kind of make a watch pop. There's a number of brands that make these, like Cartier do it. Obviously it's on AP, Patek, I've completely forgotten which one I was going to talk about next, but oh yeah, the Audemars Piguet. I'm gonna get it wrong. I'm trying to say it right now because I'm thinking too hard. I'm getting it wrong, but the Audemars Piguet has it very much so, and that they do a really great grand tapestry with that watch, and I'll put a photo of that up so you can have a look. But Cartier also have a really great guilloche in the Belle en Bleu. It's a wave guilloche and it looks superb. I know. So last one I want to talk about is I don't know if you guys have seen this, and I know some people have a really strong view either way about Tag Heuer. I love tags. Tag was one of my first fancy watches, and I still regard it as a fancy watch. I know some people think, you know, it's been dumbed down or made far too accessible or whatever the arguments are. I mean, that's a whole other video, right? The marketing's maybe a little confused on who they want to appeal to and who they want to be. But at the end of the day, they do make some fantastic watches. And one that I saw was the Fume with like a smoky dial, which looks outstanding. There's a new Radiomir that's coming out from Panerai, which has a similar look, which I'm still not allowed to post, so I'm not going to. I keep emailing my AD friend going, am I allowed to post yet? No, not yet. I'm like, okay. But have a look at the Tag Heuer Ottavia for a different kind of dial, because that smoky Fume dial just really, for me, has a great texture to it, and I feel like it tells a story, which sounds a bit odd, I know, but it does. It feels like it just has something, like a whole lot of oomph to it and something underlying in it, like a ruggedness to it that really appealed to me when I saw it in the store. Again, would I spend my money on that? No, but that's only because there's so many other watches out there now that keep making my list that list keeps getting bigger. But for me, it was just a really awesome looking dial and something a little bit different. So, I mean, that's just really a handful of different versions of watch dials. I don't think that's by any means the most exhaustive list. I think I've touched on probably the key ones. If I've missed one that's really obvious, please tell me. If I've missed an obscure one, please tell me in the comments. If you think I've got it completely wrong, well, of course I know you're going to tell me in the comments. That's what this channel's about, right? One in, all in. Thanks again for the suggestion about doing this video on watch dials. I apologize, I can't remember who suggested it, but there was one person in particular very early on in the piece in another video who did. So I wrote it down and I remembered. Hopefully you're still watching. Of course, remember to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel. It's your support that helps me keep the channel going. I do it for the love, but it's nice to know that you guys out there are enjoying the content. Thanks again as always, and until next time, have a good day.